Hello all, and welcome back to Short and Smokey, the short cigar review series. Now, today we are back outside. We're at a different park than Steven and I filmed our last smoking hour, but we are going to actually have another review today, finally. It's actually about 62 degrees out here today. It's windy, but while it was a little bit warmer, I thought I'd get out and enjoy a cigar because it's going to be back down in the 30s in a couple days. And hopefully the wind won't be so bad that you can't hear me. There's a lot less traffic here and a lot less people here in general, but we are on a hilltop here, very wooded area, so the wind can be a good bit louder. But today we are going to be smoking the La Galera Anemoi Eurus by Tabacalera Palma. I've probably not pronounced a single word right in that name except for La, but I've had this going on about 7 months now. If you watched my video where I went through my entire humidor, this is the one that I said I wasn't even going to try to pronounce. I know that sounds pretty lazy going back and watching it, but that was 3 in the morning. I was very tired. So I gave it my best today. But I actually purchased this one last summer on our beach trip down in Southport, North Carolina. Had never seen one before, but I was drawn to this band. This is an absolutely beautiful band. And the box it was in, very nice as well, had a compass inscribed on it. So right off the bat, we're going to go ahead and give that band a 5. And as for the appearance, we're going to go ahead and give this a good solid 9. There's really nothing wrong with it, with the exception of just a little bitty nick right here at the foot. Very veiny cigar, very toothy, but there's nothing wrong with that at all. So we're going to go ahead and cut into this and get smoking. So right off the bat, getting a very nutty flavor off this, a little bit of a zestiness, not quite like citrusy, but just a bit of a tartness on the end in a way. Definitely tasting some leather in there, some little bit of cedar, and yeah, just a very interesting little profile there. But we're going to go ahead and get into the first third, and I'll let you know what I think after that. Alright, so we've just gotten through the first third of this. Had to drop off the ash a little earlier. Had to relight this a couple times. Not sure if that's because of the wind or just the burn of the cigar. But it has had a couple little burn issues here and there. So far, though, flavors are expanding just a little more. I'm getting a little more notes of some coffee in here, and good leatheriness is coming in, and it's not a bitter leatheriness. I think that's where some of that citrus and zestiness I said earlier is coming from. But it's just a good little balance of that leather in there. Not too much. It's not bitter at all. Getting very little spice. Just kind of like a very light white pepper or something. But other than that burn, it's been a pretty good cigar so far. Smoke output's increased a little bit now since I've touched it up. But as you can see, it's still, it's fairly even now, but it's still kind of getting a little uneven in spots. And it's starting to chip a little bit right here, so might have to knock a point off for that. But we're going to go ahead and get into this second third, and we'll see you all again in a minute. All right, and that's about the end of the second third. And so far, that coffee flavor and the leather is a little bit more present now, and getting a little more sweetness on the retrohale, kind of a dark woodiness now versus that cedar from earlier. And still getting that kind of zestiness. It is a little more citrusy now, I'd say, right on the tip of my tongue. it's a very chewy kind of smoke, so to say. It lingers around, stays present in your mouth for, quite a few seconds. Very nice though. It's not too harsh. A little bit more pepperiness coming in, especially on the retrohale, and that's just the way I like though as it burns down. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get into the final third, and I'll let you hear my final thoughts. All right, it's about as much as I can smoke of that there. It's starting to burn my fingers and fall apart on the end here. Again, this has been the La Galera Anemoi Eurus by Tabacalera Palma. And this has been a pretty interesting cigar. Now, I had some burn issues. I'm going to kind of give it a little bit of slack, though, just because of the wind. That might have had something to do with it. But as for the cigar itself, this was sporting a Connecticut broadleaf wrapper with Dominican Republic filler. This was a Robusto at 5.5 inches and a 48 ring gauge. I gave this a straight cut, and the cost was roughly about $9.95, $10, somewhere in there. I had this aging about 7 months, and again, I bought this at the Pipe and Pint in Southport, North Carolina. There are multiple Pipe and Pints throughout the state, but I just happened to stop in this one on our trip to the beach. And again, I gave the band a solid 5 because it was a beautiful band, and the appearance was a 9, almost perfect, just a little bit of a chip there at the end, so didn't knock off too much off of that. I had to give this an 8 for price, though, because while I do feel like this would have been well worth $10 for a cigar, I had to knock off those couple of points just because of that burn. Now, the draw was absolutely perfect. Just the right amount of resistance I love, so I gave it a 10. Now, I had to relight this about probably 6 or 7 times, but again, I cut it some slack due to the wind, and even though it was still having a bad burn when the wind wasn't blowing, I did give it a 6 for burn and a 9 for construction. The only reason was that it started to flake a little bit after about the first third, so I didn't knock off too much for that, but it never once tunneled, and it didn't start unraveling on me at all. Very solid built cigar. And the smoke output, I gave an 8. It wasn't quite where I like it to be. It would be a little bit more after each relight, but then, within a few minutes, it started to die back down. The strength was exactly where I like it to be. It started out very mild, got stronger towards the end, and, starting to feel it now. So I gave it a 10 for the strength. The flavor, I gave an 8 to. As we can get into, as I said, the first third, was very nutty right there at the beginning with that zestiness, a little bit of cedar, and then had that very light spice there. The leather and coffee started coming in as the burn went on, and just very light pepper, really light spice. And then moving into the second third, more coffee and leather started to be more present, and there became a sweetness on the retrohale and some woodiness as well, kind of a little bit darker than it was at the beginning with that cedar. And some more citrus started to come through. And again, I had multiple relights on this, but the flavor stayed the same. It never took a dip, and the flavor never really got bad on this. Into the final third, more wood, more coffee was coming through. Started to get a little bit of bitterness from kind of like an espresso flavor, but it never got to the point where I couldn't stand it or didn't even like it. The leather was still very forward on it, and still some light sweetness, and I got a kind of a hint of pine nut at the very end on the retrohale. So that was a very nice surprise. So as for the flavor, I gave it an 8. And I had to give the body an 8 as well. I knocked a couple points off just because the flavors were mostly the same throughout. I was expecting, a little more change than I got, but, not enough to really knock too many points off. And I smoked this entire thing, as you see, so a solid 5 for the amount smoked. I've been smoking on this about an hour and 45 minutes now, and my pairing choice today was a boiling black cherry soda, one of my favorite sodas, and I went back to the Belgian milk chocolate truffles with toffee and sea salt. I also had a fig bar, but after I finished that, the wrapper actually blew away on me, so, hopefully no fish or bird is going to choke on that. And my final score today was an 86. So again, right about my average, or just right above my average, somewhere in there. Um, Looking through a lot of my ratings, that is where the most of mine fall, is in the mid to upper 80s. A few will stand out, of course, as I've mentioned in the past. But yeah, this is definitely one I'll go back to. Hopefully, if I could smoke this in a more controlled setting indoors, it would have a better burn. But, for outside being the one actual warm day we've had here in the last few months now, it is getting quite a bit cooler out now. That's why I've had to put my coat on in the last little while. Um, I just want to take advantage of the outdoors today, since, it's going to be a while before I can get out and smoke again, unless I can get to a lounge that is open. So again, the La Galera Anemoi Eurus gets a nice 86 for me, and yeah, again, you can rip me a new one in the comments because I know I've not pronounced any of this right, but I'm doing the best I can. So thank you again for joining me for Short and Smoky today. We'll see you all next time, and stay smoky, my friends.